If I hadn't opened the door that afternoon, my cat wouldn't have ended up soaked and shaking in the rain later. I think about that more than I should. My name is Marlo Bennett. I am 63 years old and I live alone because I chose to. That matters. This is the story of what happens when people mistake your silence for permission, and how clarity finally arrived when I stopped explaining myself. The afternoon started too quiet. I was rinsing a mug at the sink, half listening to the kettle hiss, when the doorbell rang. Not a polite tap but a long press. The kind that assumes you'll open. The kind that doesn't wait to be invited. I froze. Then laughed softly at myself. That reflex people have when they don't want to feel nervous. When I opened the door, my daughter stood there with her husband. 2 overnight bags. 1 rolling suitcase. Shoes already dusty like they'd been pacing before I showed up. She smiled first. That careful smile. "We came because we heard you bought a country house," she said. "We decided to move in with you. Make peace. Leave the past behind." She said it clean like a line rehearsed in the car. Her husband nodded beside her. Not friendly. Not hostile. Just measuring. His eyes slid past me, scanning the inside like the place was inventory. Something sharp snagged in my mind. I had never told her where I lived. Not the address. Not the town. That had been intentional. I wanted one thing in my life that wasn't up for discussion. My jaw tightened. Then I stepped aside. "Come in," I said. And even as I said it, I knew I wasn't welcoming guests. I was opening the door to find out what they really wanted. Because the moment they crossed my threshold, the silence inside my house changed. And it told me this was never just a visit. They stepped inside and stopped. Not the polite pause people make when they're taking in a space. The other kind. The kind where the body halts before the brain catches up. My son-in-law's eyes moved first. Fast. Couch. Floor. Windows. Like he was pricing things without touching them. He didn't bother hiding it. That was new. Usually he pretended better. My daughter didn't move at all. Her mouth opened then closed. She folded her hands together, like she needed something to hold on to. I walked past them into the kitchen and lifted the kettle, letting it clink louder than necessary. "Tea?" I asked over my shoulder. Not an invitation. Fact. "Ah, yeah," my daughter said too quickly, then softened it. "Sure." Her husband didn't answer. He drifted farther in, slow like the place might disappear if he moved too fast. I set out 3 cups. One of them chipped. I hadn't replaced it. I let him notice. "This is..." My daughter started, then stopped herself. I waited. "Nicer than I imagined," she finished, then laughed. "Awkward. I mean comfortable. Very comfortable." There it was. The slip. The correction. The lie stacked on top of the truth. I handed her a mug. Our fingers brushed. She flinched. Her husband finally spoke. "You did all this yourself?" I met his eyes. Held them. "I live here." That was all. We sat, not together. Close enough to talk, far enough to keep space. Nobody asked how I managed it. Nobody congratulated me. They just looked around, recalibrating. I took a sip of tea and burned my tongue a little. I didn't react. Inside, something settled. Not satisfaction. Something firmer. They hadn't come to check on me. They'd come to check the math. And once I realized I was being counted instead of cared for, I started paying attention to every word they said next. My daughter leaned forward first, both hands wrapped tight around her mug like it was a prop. "Look, Mom," she said, voice soft. "Careful. We've all made mistakes. Life's short. Family should be everything. This could be a fresh start for all of us." Her husband nodded along. "Quiet out here," he added. "You shouldn't be handling everything alone anymore. We can help you out." Help. That word again. Always sounds generous until you ask what it actually means. I let the silence stretch. Just long enough to make it uncomfortable. "Okay," I said. "How long?" They blinked. "How long what?" my daughter asked. "You staying?" "Weeks. Months. Permanent." A quick glance passed between them. "Practiced." "Well," she said lightly, "we thought we'd just see how it goes." I nodded once. "Expenses." Her husband shifted. "We'd contribute, obviously." "To what?" I asked. "Utilities. Food. Repairs." He shrugged. We'll figure it out as we go. There it was again. Fog. And privacy, I added. Rules. Quiet hours. Space. My daughter laughed a little too sharp. Mom, you're overthinking this. No, I said calmly. I'm thinking exactly enough. I set my mug down. I like clarity. It saves problems later. Her husband smiled tight. You always did like control. There it was. The edge beneath the sweetness. I like plans that exist, I said. They didn't answer. Just waited. And that's when it clicked. Real plans come with dates and numbers. Whatever this was came with none of that. Only expectation. And once expectation shows up without permission, it doesn't take long before something precious gets tested. Christmas came before any answers did. The house smelled like pine and catered food I had helped pay for, though no one mentioned that part. I'd spent months saving for my granddaughter's gift. Not something flashy. Not something disposable. A handmade locket. A photo of us inside. Something meant to last. I wrapped it myself. The corners weren't perfect. My hands shook. Not from age but from hope. My son-in-law picked it up first. He didn't open the card. Just turned the box over once, then shrugged. Oh, he said, loud enough to cut through the music. She already has a designer one from her other grandparents. This is kind of redundant. Then he walked into the kitchen and dropped it into the trash. Just like that. The plastic clinked against empty bottles. Final. Clean. I froze. I looked at my daughter waiting for anything. A word. A look. A line drawn. She laughed and took a sip of wine. Mom, don't make it awkward. You know how kids are. They like brand names. Awkward. As if my love was a social inconvenience. Later that night, when the house finally went quiet, I pulled the box out of the trash. The receipt was still inside. Proof of the hours worked. The meals skipped. The care taken. I stared at it until the numbers blurred. That's when I realized I'd been paying emotional rent for decades, buying my seat at the table with silence. I folded the receipt and put it in my pocket. I didn't plan revenge. I just decided I was done living somewhere I could be thrown away. Because once you see how easily you're discarded, you start planning how to leave without announcing it. I didn't announce anything after that night. That part mattered. Early the next year, I started shrinking my life on purpose. I sold furniture I never liked. Gave away dishes that only came out when I was hosting people who barely looked at me anyway. I kept what worked and let the rest go. When my daughter called and asked why I sounded busy lately, I told her I was tired. Which was true, just not in the way she meant. I used my savings carefully. No big swings. No fantasy version of freedom. I bought modest. Solid. The kind of choice you make when you don't want to move again, ever. I chose the Asheville area because it felt quiet without being lonely. People nodded at each other. Nobody asked follow-up questions that felt like inspections. When the realtor asked if my family would be visiting often, I paused, then smiled. Not really. She nodded like she understood more than she said. I didn't explain myself to anyone. Not friends. Not relatives. I stopped translating my choices into something easier for other people to accept. That alone felt like strength I hadn't practiced before. The only person I talked things through with was the man installing my security cameras. Mid-40s. Local. Practical. Living alone? He asked. Yes. Doors and yard coverage? Yes. No pity. No comments about my age. Just clarity. When I mentioned my daughter later, he didn't ask why she wasn't helping. He finished drilling and handed me the manual. Being treated like someone capable felt better than sympathy ever had. I unpacked slowly. Left boxes open for weeks. Took my time choosing where things belonged. And for the first time in years, nobody told me I was doing it wrong. I thought the quiet meant I was safe, but I didn't yet know how closely they were watching from a distance. I didn't need paperwork to know something was wrong. Their bodies said it first. My daughter's purse sat on the chair like it always had. Angled just right so the logo showed. Only this one wasn't real. A good fake. Close enough that most people wouldn't notice. I noticed. I used to sell fabrics and trims back when I worked retail. You learn seams. You learn shortcuts. Her husband kept checking his phone. Screen down. Jaw tight. Every vibration landed heavy. They were polite in that brittle way, too many thank yous, too much smiling. Like people who knew they were on borrowed time. I stepped outside to refill the bird feeder. Didn't announce it. That's when I heard his voice. Low. Sharp. Coming from the side yard. I told you we need more time, he snapped. A pause. Then quieter. No. This is the final notice. I stayed still. Let the feeder hang crooked in my hand. Don't send anything yet, he said. We're setting up a payment plan. I went back inside like I hadn't heard a thing. That evening my daughter sat closer than before. Her voice softened again. I was thinking, she said carefully, stirring tea she wasn't drinking. Maybe it would be nice if our daughter came to stay here for a bit. Quality time. Her husband nodded too fast. Fresh air. Stability. There it was, the pivot. How long? I asked. She waved it away. Just a little while. We'll figure it out. That phrase again. I really looked at her then. She wasn't asking for her daughter. She was offering her a peace token, a guilt lever, insurance. I nodded slowly. We'll talk about it. Relief crossed her face, not joy. Relief. That settled it. Whatever hole they were in, it was deep enough to use a child as padding. And once a child becomes collateral, every remaining line becomes very clear. They waited until after dinner. Plates stacked. Sink half full. Timing matters to people who want something. My daughter started gently. We just need a little help until things stabilize. I'm not doing that, I said. Her husband leaned forward, elbows on his knees. It wouldn't be forever. I know, I replied. Still no. Silence followed. The bad kind. Then the edge crept in. You have the space, he said. You have more than we do. There it was, the math said out loud. I stood and grabbed the folder I'd already made. Plain. No drama. I set it on the table between us and slid it open. If anyone stays here, I said, tapping the page. This is how it works. My daughter blinked. What's that? Rules. I read them without flair. Shared expenses. Chores listed by name. Privacy respected. No borrowing without asking. No yelling. A firm end date written in ink. Her smile tightened like a pulled thread. Mom, this feels a little extreme. Her husband scoffed. We're family. You're acting like a landlord. Landlords are clearer, I said. They don't pretend it's love. He laughed short and sharp. So what? You're just turning your back on us. I'm standing still, I replied. You're the ones pushing. They exchanged that look. The one I'd seen 1,000 times. Decide. Then punish. The house changed after that. Not loud, just wrong. Cabinet doors left open. Plate forgotten on the couch. My notes moved. Little things. Petty things. Tests. I noticed my cat first. He didn't come when I tapped the bowl. He always comes. Even when he's mad. Have you seen him? I asked casual. My daughter shrugged without looking up. Her husband kept scrolling. I didn't grab a flashlight. I grabbed my phone. I opened the security app and rewound the footage. My blood turned to ice as I watched my son-in-law carry my cat to the outdoor shed. Latch the door and check it twice, just as the first raindrops fell. It wasn't an accident. It was a message. And the moment someone hurt, I didn't yell. I ran. I pulled my cat from the shed, soaked and shaking, and wrapped him in a towel. Rain rattled the roof like it had something to prove. Inside, the house felt different. Not broken. Clear. My daughter followed a minute later. She looked at the shed door. Didn't say a word. That told me everything. I locked my bedroom door that night for the first time since moving in. Not because I was afraid, but because decisions get easier when there's no confusion left. The next afternoon, my granddaughter arrived with a backpack that looked too heavy for her shoulders. My daughter stayed in the car. Engine running. Window cracked. She waved like this was normal. Hey, Grandma, my granddaughter said, already stepping inside. She talked while she ate. Quiet facts. Red notices on the apartment door. Sleeping in cars. Fighting. Then she said it. Dad put a tracker on your car. He was waiting for you to lead him here. Something in me went very still. That evening, I brought them into the living room. No shouting. No build-up. You tracked my address, I said. You planned to stay without asking. And you locked my cat outside in the rain. Her husband opened his mouth. I raised my hand. I'm finished. I told them they were leaving. Today. I told him I had footage of the shed. I told my daughter the child would stay here, safe, warm, in school. If you take her back to sleep in a car, I said. I call the police and the bank the moment you hit the driveway. No bargaining. No hugs. I locked the door after them and leaned my forehead against the wood. The rain had stopped. My cat curled against my ankle. Warm. Alive. Here's what I learned late but fully. Boundaries don't make you cruel. They make you honest. And honesty costs people who were living off your silence. If this story felt familiar, you're not alone. And choosing yourself isn't abandonment. It's survival.